Financial Planner. Follow us on YouTube.
Control the currency, manipulate the economy, collapse the economy. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, I titled this report, Control the Currency, Manipulate the Economy, then Collapse the Economy, because we know this is what the central bank does. Now, the central bank uses other parts of the government, they use the corporate media, they use other factions within government. Now, of course, they get free money, they get tips, they get insider trading tips, and most of these individuals become very, very wealthy in government. And what they like to do is they like to put out manipulated information. The corporate media loves to do this. They'll tell you that, oh, retail is doing the best that we've ever seen in our lifetime. This is exactly what retailers needed. The retail apocalypse has been called off. Everything is great. The economy's doing fine. And when you really look at these numbers, we see that something doesn't make sense. Now, yes, retail has ticked up a little bit, and it didn't meet expectations of what they thought December was going to be like. Now, sales growth was about 0.3% month on month. Does that sound really that great? No, it doesn't. Because what we need to do is we need to go back in time a little bit. If we go back to last holiday season, 2016, going into 2017, they had headlines out there. And one of the headlines says, retail sales jump in December on strong car and online shopping. Retail sales increased by 0.6% from a revised 0.2%. Now let's think about that for a second. They're telling us, and this was last holiday season where we reported that the holiday season was a complete disaster. They were telling us that the retail industry grew by 0.6%. Now, first they had the numbers out at 0.2% and then revised them to 0.6%. And then in the year of 2017, stores closed down. This year, we're getting an increase of 0.3%. Very interesting. What does that tell us? It tells us these numbers are manipulated, and if we go by what happened last year and we look at this year, you know this number is much, much lower. You know they're going to revise it and make it seem like, retail was at 0.8%. But once again, you have to understand, sales does not equal profits. Just because sales are at 0.3% doesn't mean these stores made a profit. Maybe their profit margin, maybe they had to put these things on sale and they only made $1 from each sale. Can the store stay open? No. And then we break it down even further. And we look at some of the sales like electronics. Well, in the month of December, they were down by negative 0.2%. That's not good. We look at clothing accessories, down negative 0.3%. We look at sporting goods, hobby, book and music stores. They were down negative 1.6%. Miscellaneous store retailers were down negative 2.9%. General merchandise stores, department stores, negative 1.1%. There are some places where sales were up. Motor vehicle parts, 0.4%. We see furniture was up 0.6%. But the things that you purchase for the holiday season, it seems like those were all down. But we're getting these sales numbers and we'll go with them. Again, we're not getting the actual numbers from the stores, and those are going to be very, very different. Now, they're trying to convince us, and they keep putting out, by the way, those credit card numbers where, oh, look, it's up by 4.9%. It's not really up by 4.9% because you need to look at the past numbers. And if you look at the past numbers, it's up like 0.5%. But they like to put out those numbers anyhow. Now, while all this is going on, savings is at a 10-year low. People have no savings. And if you take this a step further, credit card borrowing hit all-time new highs. Now, if we go back to 2007 going into 2008, we're at that same point. So they didn't meet expectations, the retailers. It's very close to the same exact number that we had last year, which was 0.2%. Of course, they revised it to 0.6%. These percentage numbers are ridiculous anyhow, because the sales were very, very low last year, this is not going to help. And we already see that Macy's is closing. We see Sam's Club is closing. Sears is going to be declaring bankruptcy. Neiman Marcus right now is facing bankruptcy. And this is coming from Credit Risk Monitor. And we know that there are other stores, Bon-Ton, Sears Holding, and many others. They're all on the verge of crashing. Now remember, the retail debt comes due this year. Now the question is, do these retailers have enough to pay for the debt, or are they going to have to get more debt to pay for that debt? And this is where stores get into trouble. Again, sales and profits are two separate things. And we're looking at this economy, and it is completely manipulated to make you think that it is doing well. I mean, the headlines, when you read them, you think that everything was great. This is what they do. They manipulate what is really going on because they want everyone all in. Because when everyone is all in, this is when they pull the plug and the economy comes down. It's the same exact thing they've done time and time again. And when I say they, it's the central bank. We see the core consumer prices. They have risen faster than expected. And once again, inflation is rising. They're using a lot of manipulation to make us believe that inflation is not rising, but it's moving very, very quickly to the upside. And this is with housing, it's with college tuition. We're seeing it with many other things, food and many other things where we see inflation moving up. And they also, the stock market, they also offloaded a lot of inflation out of this country. And we can see that as we look at this economy, and as they continually manipulate it, it just gets worse and worse. Now, what's very interesting, we've been reporting on how the housing market has been doing. And, of course, they're telling us these 20 cities prices are moving up, and that means everything is great, which is meaningless because in 2007 going into 2008, housing prices were at the highest we've ever seen before, and that didn't mean the economy was doing well. Actually, that meant the opposite. The economy started to break down, crash, because of all the underlying things that they really didn't tell us about. But this is what they do. They keep everyone in the dark. Now, Wells Fargo, almost their entire business is on mortgages. And right now, they have reported the worst mortgage number since the financial crisis? How could this be? If the real estate market's doing so fantastically and everyone's buying a house. Well, we debunked that a long time ago. And when we look at this, we can see that Wells Fargo mortgage application pipeline plunged by a whopping 23% to just $23 billion. I mean, we're almost back to the financial crisis level. I mean, this is unbelievable. And we can see that this isn't getting any better, and this has been declining since 2012. And it had a little pop-up, but the trajectory is downward. Now, when we look at the bank's consumer loan trends, these reveal that aside from credit cards, there's a huge decline in credit demand, and people are not taking out loans. We know mortgages. We know automobile is on a decline. If we look at the fourth quarter of 2016, third quarter of 2017, fourth quarter of 2017, it's declining. Other revolving credit installments is declining. And what these numbers disturbingly reveal is that the average U.S. consumer cannot afford to take out mortgages at a time when rates rise by as little as 1%. It also means that if the Fed is truly intent on engineering a parallel shift in the curve of 2 to 3%, the U.S. can kiss its domestic housing market goodbye. What this means is that if these rates move up, it's going to knock thousands upon thousands of people out of the housing market, which means the housing market is going to crash. Didn't we see this before? We did. Back in 2006, 2007, when they were raising the rates, people who had adjustable rate mortgages just left their home because it didn't matter if they refinanced it, the rates were too high. It pushed millions of people out of the housing market. It crashed the housing market, and that had a domino effect on the rest of the economy. There were other things happening, of course. We had the fake subprime securities. We had corporations that were pretending that everything was fine when they were really bankrupt. They couldn't survive. They needed billions upon billions of dollars. Guess what, people? The same thing is happening now, but it's much, much worse. Now, Bill Dudley, he is the second most important person in the Federal Reserve, and he said the following, which is very interesting. He admitted that there are risks in the economy, and he's concerned about the long-term fiscal position of the United States, the U.S. debt. Specifically, Dudley said that the Trump tax cut will increase the nation's longer-term fiscal burden, which is already facing other pressures, such as higher debt services costs, entitlement spending, as the baby boom generation retires. But there was no mention of any other administration who, doubled the debt in a decade. There was no mention of that. There was no mention of how the U.S., how the economy was doing prior to Trump. What they're doing right now, and this is the central bank, they're setting it up to blame Trump for this. Now, what Trump is doing, he's setting up the economy not to repair itself, not to get it back on its feet, not to bring back manufacturing so we can continue on this system. What he's doing is he's maneuvering and bringing this economy into a different sphere, a sphere away from the central bank system. And it is a race right now on who is going to cross the finish line first and who is going to be blamed. Now, Trump's mission right now, and it's not just Trump, by the way, it's not just him. There are many patriots behind him who are pushing this agenda where they are basically reworking the economy to fit into this new economic structure that we're entering. Because, as we can see, the old system, it's pretty much dead. The central bank wants to get rid of this old system, which, of course, they want to keep it a secret that they were in charge of. They want to start a new system and blame the crash on the old system on someone else. It could be another country, it could be Trump, it could be anyone. It doesn't really matter at this point, but they're going to try to do that. And the race is who's going to pass the finish line first. Will it be those patriots and Trump who are trying to rework the system and get rid of the central bank? Or is it going to be the central bank who's going to be able to bring the economy down and blame it on Trump? They're both doing the same exact thing right now, where they're pushing the economy to its limit. Trump wants to bring it down and blame the central bank. The central bank wants to bring it down and maybe blame the Trump administration and those patriots who are trying to take control. Trump is trying to buy a little bit of time to rework the economy so we can move forward once the system resets. And that's where we're headed right now. The system must reset. Now, the central bank has another worry. The worry is cryptocurrencies. And what's very interesting, they put out that fake news story of, South Korea, where they're going to be issuing this law where they're going to ban cryptos, and all of a sudden Bitcoin dropped, and they can say, hey, look how volatile it is. Now the story comes out that South Korea is not going to do anything with the crypto exchanges. Actually, they've been receiving thousands upon thousands of people saying, we don't want you to do this. And they didn't even draft a bill. They didn't even do anything. They just came out with this story, and I'm talking about the Cabal, the central bank, to push the agenda to make the crypto market look very volatile. Now, there's a reason for this, because again, in the title, I said they need to control the currency. Now, Secretary Steven Mnuchin came out, and he said something very interesting about Bitcoin. He says, we want to make sure bad people can't use Bitcoin to do bad things. So what he's talking about is that he's working with a group of 20 nations to prevent cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin from becoming the digital equivalent of an anonymous Swiss bank account. What is he talking about? They're going to make laws that is going to take control of the crypto market. He says we are very focused on cryptocurrencies. And he's saying that the U.S. government has regulations. We want to make sure that other countries have similar regulations. And we want to make sure that we can stop those bad people from using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Munition said that the Financial Stability Oversight Council, a government body that assesses financial system risk, has formed a working group focused on cryptocurrencies, and explained that in the United States, and people may not realize this, under our laws, if you have a wallet to own Bitcoins, that company has the same obligations as a bank to know your customer. So in the United States, we have rules for anti-money laundering. Except the banks do launder money, and that's the banks doing it for the elite. And they're saying that other countries don't have this. And basically what they're doing right now is they're going to put forth a set of rules and laws to try to take control of the crypto market, to make sure that it never becomes a currency, that the governments of all these countries will be pressured to make sure that cryptos never become a working currency. Now, of course, he went on to say that don't worry, the Fed's not going to be coming out with their own cryptocurrency. Remember, everything that they're saying is always the opposite of what they really mean. And what he's really saying is we need to take control of the cryptocurrencies, not because of bad people. It's because we don't want everyday people to use this as a currency and bypass the dollar, the euro, or any central bank currency. And I don't mean just for Bitcoin. It could be any cryptocurrency. And what he's really saying is we're going to take control of this entire system with rules and regulations. And once we have the rules and regulations and we make sure that all the other countries have rules and regulations, we'll be okay. Because then we don't have to worry about cryptocurrencies or the blockchain or anything like that. And if we so desire, we can come out with our own, and we'll make additional laws that says, since those are volatile and bad people are using it, we need a centrally controlled one that the Fed will use. And we've known that this was coming. We knew this is what they were going to try to do. And like I said, this is a race to see who crosses the finish line first. Now, of course, those patriots and Trump who are fighting against the central bank, they're fighting against the cabal, they're fighting against the neocons. It's a huge fight over here. And we have the cabal, the central bank, that are fighting against these individuals because they like their system. They like the control. They like the manipulation. They like to control governments. Because, again, if the central bank controls the issuance of currency, the creation of currency, they can control everything. And why would they want to give that control up? They wouldn't. So we're headed towards this transition, this reset, and we're watching it in real time. Now, the economy is ripping itself apart. They're going to keep these stories up that everything is great, and it looks like they might even use this tax plan to blame this whole thing, because it looks like the central bank is trying to make their move, maybe to bring it down, during a certain period, maybe this year. And again, the Economist magazine was out there saying that in 2018, this is when everything's going to change. And once again, people are saying, oh, we're not going to be going on a gold standard, but China and Russia have a lot of gold. Doesn't mean they'll back the currency by gold, but it will give people confidence in the new system. And that's all people really need, governments need, to know that, okay, you have a real asset. We're confident. We're okay to use the paper currency, even though it's not backed by it, because look, the dollar's not backed by anything. And people are okay because they were convinced that it was backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. And they felt secure in that. So they can use the gold to say, listen, it's not backed by gold, but if something happens, we do have an insurance policy. And we have this gold which was reevaluated, repriced, and we have more than enough to handle any type of situation. And governments and people will say, okay, we believe you. And this is what's happening right now. So we have these two things happening all at once. And we're definitely going to go through a transition. It's just going to be how bad it's going to be. Is it going to be a little bit smoother and softer? Or is it going to be hard, sudden, and boom, people are going to be very angry? Now, if the central banks, let me just explain this. If the central banks get their way, it's going to be hard hitting because they want to make sure that it's blamed on what those individuals in government did. Trump, the patriots behind this. And they'll make sure that the corporate media, the people understand this is why it came down. And the harder they bring it down, the more angry the people are going to be at who? Not the central bank, at the Trump administration, at those patriots who are fighting for the people. If Trump passes the finish line first and is able to outsmart the central banks, not just him, other individuals who are working with him, and he's able to smooth this out, it won't be as bad, but he can put the blame on the central bank and say this is why it all happened. And this is what we're looking at right now. We're still going to go through the transition. It's not going to be pleasant, but these are the two scenarios that I see happening at this time. So whatever you're doing, get prepared. To convince the public this is what the cabal does. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the cabal is becoming very, very, very desperate. And like I said, eventually what they were going to do is they were going to try everything they possibly can to bring down Trump, the administration, those patriots that are trying to take the country back. And what they're out there doing is they're pushing a story that Trump used a curse word when he was describing other people from other countries. And what they're saying, he said, was, why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here? And then they started to push the idea that he's racist. And you need to understand how the cabal works. They work with the corporate media, one and the same. And since they have the ability to control the corporate media, they can put out stories and have every single one of the networks repeat the same exact story. And we've seen this with Conan O'Brien, where each one of the networks just keep repeating the same exact thing. It's all scripted. And when they do this is they try to convince people, since it's repeated over and over and over, it's almost like brainwashing, it must be true if they all have it. No, it doesn't mean it's true. It just means everyone's repeating it. I mean, they repeated Russian collusion how many times? Doesn't mean it's true. They repeated a lot of things. It doesn't mean it's true. Even if they have their fact checkers, which we know they're not checking facts, they're checking against the intelligence agencies to say, here are the real facts, even though we manipulated all the facts. So they're pushing this story, and they're trying everything they possibly can to get Trump out of office. That's really what they want. They don't want him there because he's undoing everything they've done over the many years. And it's not just him. He's just the front man. That's it. They have other people working behind the scenes that are helping him, who are true patriots, who want the country back. And of course, Trump is out there, and he's going to say this is a fake news story. He's already denying that he even said that. Actually, he said, yes, I used tough language during his immigration reform meeting with members of Congress, but he says, this is not the type of language that I would use. I don't speak like this. And what's going to happen is, yes, the corporate media is going to play this over and over. People are going to have huge discussions over it, analyzing how he's a racist and things like that. And while that's going on, they're also going to bring up other stories. Another story that's coming out right now, this is coming out from the Wall Street Journal, and they just revived the same exact story, how his lawyers paid a porn star like $130,000 to stay quiet or something like that. And they're just going to continually push these stories out there because what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a momentum to convince the public this is why he needs to be impeached. Now, again, none of them ever turned out to be true. They just keep repeating the same things, and hopefully something catches. And every time they try to do this, they fail. Now, we need to understand why they're so upset about what he's trying to do with immigration. Why are these individuals willing to push this agenda over the Deferred Action for Childhood Revivals? That's the DACA. Now, on the White House's own website, it lays the idea out very clearly. The United States must adopt an immigration system that serves the national interest to restore the rule of law and secure our borders. Trump is committed to constructing a border wall, ensuring the swift removal of unlawful entrants. Remember, the people who are here, they're illegal. There's a reason why they call them illegal, because they're not here legally. Yes, you can come into this country, just follow the procedures. It's very simple. He went on to say, the White House went on to say, they want to protect the American workers. The president supports ending chain migration, eliminating the visa lottery, and moving the country to a merit-based entry system. These reforms will advance the safety and prosperity of all Americans while helping new citizens assimilate and flourish. Now, the senators that came to the DACA meeting yesterday did not want this. They don't want him to do this. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals is a program that was started as an executive order by Obama. Now, some people say it's a memorandum. Some people say it's an executive order, but it's there. What this does, it allows some immigrants who came into the U.S. illegally as children from being deported immediately. It is fairly expansive, allowing any individual who entered the U.S. illegally to defer deportation for 2 years. If they were younger than 31 years old on June 15, 2012, and who came to the USA before they were 16 years old. In other words, this order and concurrent program applies to not just children, but to adults who may have been in the workforce for over 10 years. The idea is to allow these people time to make the move to legalized status in the country, but it also amounts to an amnesty in many ways because the deferral can be renewed. The charge made by liberals and the media is, of course, to portray the intent to phase this program out as cruelty to children, when in fact, many of these people, they're not children at all, but working adults who are gaming the U.S. tax system by not participating in the American structure as citizens. Illegal aliens are often paid off the books for the work, and although this can mean low wages, it also means that what wages these people get, they get to keep it all. Gaining legal status in the U.S. means what it does in any country, that that person becomes subject to the laws including those of taxation in that country. Now remember, these people are coming into this country illegally. And the reason why they need these individuals, and this goes back to the TPP, and not just the TPP, but for many reasons, is because once that was in place, every person in this country, and they're allowed to bring any more people into this, they were going to make the salaries, the income that these individuals and the people of the United States even. Because what they wanted to do is they wanted to bring people from other countries into this country, and they would work in factories in this country making the same salary they were making in the other countries. What would that do to the American worker? It would put them out of work. The American worker would have to drop their salary to that level. This is all the one world government type of thing. That's what they wanted to do with the TPP. But that got shot down. There are other things that allows why they wanted these individuals in here. One, because they know that they would vote for Democrats, which they can't really do, but again, they game the voting system. And while not having legal status can be harder in terms of not being able to receive some services in the United States, like a driver's license and other services, well, a lot of these laws pertaining to this were done away with. In other words, they gain an ID without responsibility to participate in some of the less fun aspects of living in the U.S., like paying taxes. Now, the meeting that made the news today with President Trump allegedly cursing was different than the televised meeting from a day before. However, it provided a lot of fodder for the anti-Trump press after an unusually dignified and surprising televised meeting with a wide ideological slice of congressional members the day before. And of course, they have no records of this, they have no tape recording of this, they have no filming of this. They're just out there saying that this is what he said, and he's saying, no, this is not what I said. And every time this comes up, it turns out the corporate media has lied. And we see right now they are pushing their agenda as hard as they possibly can, because what they have in place they don't want removed. And this is what they're doing right now. All of these things, Obamacare, the executive order, the memorandum for allowing illegals to come in here, this was all part of their major plan, which is now going south. And they don't want all of this to disappear, because that means they're done for. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to push their agenda to keep what they have. But it's all falling apart very, very quickly. And you can see the only thing they have left is to call him a womanizer, a racist, and they play on emotions. That's what the cabal has. This is what the corporate media has. They never have facts. They just say racist, 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 or they say womanizer, womanizer, womanizer. They just keep using these terms over and over and over to get people angry, because that's all they have left. They can't think of anything else to do at this point. And they're getting pissed off about it, because they know the walls are closing in on them. And it's getting harder and harder, and they have nothing left, because the Mueller investigation has gone nowhere. There's a lot of investigations into the Clintons, into the Uranium One deal, into Obama, into Eric Holder, into Susan Rice, and the rest of what they've done in the past. And believe me, and Comey and the rest, and a lot of things they've done are completely illegal. This is why they already have the indictments ready to go. We see right now the U.S. Central Command Chief General Joseph Votel has assured the head of Pakistan's army that the U.S. is not contemplating any unilateral action inside the country. Pakistan was very worried that maybe they would have regime change or something like that, and they're saying that, no, we're not going to be doing anything. The whole plan here was to shut down the cabal in Afghanistan. That's what this was all about. To shut down the roots, to make sure that the terrorists in the country, those individuals that are working for the cabal, they have nowhere to go. And to shut down supplies and things like that, to get rid of the poppy fields. And this is what's happening right now. And eventually what's going to happen is all those troops in Afghanistan, they're going to actually end up leaving, just like the troops leaving in Iraq. They're going to be leaving Syria, and I'm going to be talking about Syria in just a minute. And we see that all of this is now happening in real time. Now, Russia is out there, and they are saying that the U.S. has de facto occupied parts of Syria, like the al-tanf area, and they're saying that they're blocking humanitarian aid to these refugee camps in certain areas. And I think what Russia is going to end up doing here, and this is why they're saying this, is they're going to be going to the UN to say that the U.S. has no right to be in Syria. And Trump is going to have to make a decision at this point in time, just like he made the decision with the Iran sanctions, where he waived the Iranian sanctions, and of course he said for the last time. Now once again, he has no choice, and he didn't want to place more sanctions on Iran. Now I know the Treasury Department placed certain sanctions on individuals like they've done with Russia. It's meaningless. It doesn't do anything. The deal with Iran was originally put into place so they never acquired nuclear weapons. That's what it was really about, because they knew once they got into Syria, they'd be able to invade or have regime change in Iran, and they wanted to make sure they didn't have nuclear weapons. That's why they pushed that deal. Trump right now is saying this is an awful deal. Why should they be allowed to have nuclear weapons? I mean, are we really stopping North Korea from getting nuclear weapons? No, they're getting nuclear weapons. That's the plan, is to have them a nuclear power. The plan is to have the IAEA come in and inspect and make sure that they can protect themselves, because every country has the right to protect themselves. This is why it's a bad deal. Also, it pushed Iran closer and closer to Russia and China. And remember, this is all a game right now. To undo everything the Cabal has done takes time. And again, if the Patriots, if Trump moves too quickly, the Cabal would react. And the reaction is not going to be good. So what he needs to do is he needs to keep them off track on what is really going on here, and shut down things in the meantime, and place investigations into certain individuals and what has gone on in the government at the same time, to keep them scrambled, to keep them confused, so they have nothing left. And if you noticed, what do they have left here? Everything they told us was fake. The Russian collusion, that he's going to be impeached, that we're going to start war with Syria. Thank God he bombed that base. We're going in there. We're going to remove Assad. That never happened. That we're going to be invading North Korea. This is why the ships are headed towards there. Remember, right in the beginning, when the corporate media reported that the aircraft carriers were headed there, and they really weren't? The whole thing is a game. Because inside of the Pentagon, inside the FBI, inside the CIA, yes, there are good people, and there are those that are part of the Cabal. And it takes time to remove those individuals within these departments. And some of these individuals are high-ranking, where they have a lot of control. And we see right now, the entire agenda here is to slowly move and trap these individuals, and then make a move on the central bank. That's why he has Andrew Jackson hanging in his office. It's not because he's on the $20 bill. It's because he got rid of the central bank. He was the president who got rid of them. He campaigned on getting rid of the central bank. Yes, the central bank tried to take him out. They tried to assassinate him. It didn't work. But he did it. Trump and those patriots are going to try to do the same exact thing. The problem is that the central bank, the Cabal, they've been in government, they've been behind the scenes, they have plants everywhere. They're like a virus that's spread throughout our system. And to kill off this virus takes time, because they've infiltrated almost everything. And we can see right now, we're in the process of doing this. It's not over as of yet, but we're getting very close. And this doesn't mean that these individuals aren't going to try anything. We can see already with the corporate media, they're pushing a new agenda, and they're bringing up old stories. They're trying to do whatever they can to shut this down, because they know the end game is not going to be good for them. And who knows if the corporate media will even survive this, because a lot of people are going to look at this and say, okay, they lied to us all this time. They don't really report news. It's just propaganda. These individuals were stealing money from the American people. They were pushing regime change in countries, killing innocent individuals to make themselves wealthy. And when people start to hear this, and once it eventually comes out, it's going to be a very tough time for America. And this is going to be part of the transition. It's all part of it. The economic collapse, getting out of their system, people learning the truth, transitioning to a new way of life. And this is where we're headed, but we need to go through this bumpy road to get there.